Tonight, breaking news, Super Saturday. 4 by-elections held in New South Wales in what some say is the first major test of New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet and Labor leader Chris Minns. We've got the latest on the results and what impact COVID and postal voting has had. It's Sunday, the 13th of February. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
We know that there will be significant pressures come late autumn, winter. And the most important thing we can do now to protect ourselves for that is to come forward and get vaccinated.
Victoria's co-Brandford's health system set to be lifted and restrictions on elective surgery also easing. Authorities reporting lowering case numbers and hospitalisation rates, but deaths continuing to rise. And a community left in shock after a man died at a motel in Brisbane's north after being found with critical head and leg injuries. Our reporter is standing by on the ground. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Later this hour, we'll head overseas with almost 60,000 bees stolen from a US supermarket's headquarters in Pennsylvania. But as pandemic supply chain pressures in the country ease, President Joe Biden is still facing criticism over inflation. But first tonight, the Super Saturday of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 by-elections in New South Wales has wrapped up after what some say was the first major test of New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet and Labor leader Chris Minns since they both took on their respective roles last year. Voters headed to the polls in the seats of Bega, Monaro, Strathfield and former Premier Gladys Berejiklian's seat of Willoughby, while others chose to vote via post as COVID affected how people cast their ballot. Reporter Lincoln Holmes has the latest developments.
4 seats, 4 resignations and 4 by-elections. Hundreds of thousands of people across New South Wales turned out to have their say on a Super Saturday. It was dubbed as the first major challenge for Premier Dominic Perrottet and opposition leader Chris Minns since they both took their respective roles last year. First, let's look at the seat of Strathfield, held by former Labor leader Jody McKay, and he's said to stay with the party, with Jason Yatsen-Lee claiming victory late last night, calling out racism in his victory speech.
This rejection of racism and discrimination is in the Labor DNA.
Meanwhile, the Nationals candidate for John Barilaro's former seat of Monaro spoke about the positive result last night, with Nicole Overall saying she was stunned, honoured and privileged.
We knew it was going to be a tough fight. This idea that Monaro is a safe seat is not true. You always have to fight as hard as you possibly can.
Liberals candidate Tim James declared he is well qualified to take over from former Premier Gladys Berejiklian in her old blue ribbon seat, where Labor did not run a candidate, although there was a large swing against the Liberals.
I will represent them to the very best of my ability every day. I will work so hard for them, and I'm humbled by this outcome.
We do know enough about the results that have come in so far to be confident that we will claim the seat of Bega and the seat of Strathfield at today's by-elections. Congratulations.
Labor claiming victory in the seat which they have never held since it was created way back in 1894.
It's been an incredible swing to our party. It's been a plebiscite on a couple of things. It's been a reflection of the community's response to the current government.
The ABC reports that Dominic Perrottet says he's proud that the Liberals have taken votes from Labor in Strathfield and says his party will claim the seat in the 2023 state election. Well, there were celebrations from the other side of politics. COVID has affected how many people voted, with a large amount of postal votes that may still need counting. But tonight, the 4 results in 4 New South Wales electorate seem pretty clear. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
And look, just on the topic of elections, taxpayers may be forking out up to $500 million to run what could be the most expensive federal election in Australia's history. The New Daily reports the Australian Electoral Commission anticipates it will cost around $400 million. That's a rise compared to the $300 million in 2019. Now, once election funding paid to parties is added after the election, it may hit that $500 million mark. The latest possible date for an election is May 21st. And for more coverage of the New South Wales by-elections, head to our website, 6newsau.com. Plus, if you're looking for coverage of that upcoming federal election that we just mentioned, you can also head to the website where we've got a dedicated page set up. Again, that is 6newsau.com. Well, Victoria's code brown for its health system is set to be lifted while restrictions on elective surgery will also ease. Authorities are reporting lowering case numbers and hospitalisation rates, but deaths continuing to rise. It comes after the deadline for key healthcare workers to have a third vaccine dose was extended until March 12. Senior reporter Darby Travers has the latest.
It's been in place for almost a month, but from tomorrow, the code brown in place across Victoria's health system is set to end. Authorities are reporting lowering case numbers and hospitalisation rates, but deaths are continuing to rise. Yesterday alone, 19 people died, with the majority of tests conducted via a rat. The announcement about the code brown ending means hospitals will largely return to normal and elective surgery bans will also ease. Private hospitals will be able to perform up to 50% of all elective surgery in Metro Melbourne and just 75% in regional Victoria.
We heard the Chief Medical Officer earlier this week talk about the big risk in coming months is as we head into winter and to autumn, and to see a return of the Omicron wave, and indeed with international borders and international tourists returning, the prospect of a nasty flu season on top of that. So we know that there will be significant pressures come late autumn, winter, and the most important thing we can do now to protect ourselves for that is to come forward and get vaccinated whilst protecting our hospitals and making sure that they can operate still under pretty stressful circumstances.
It comes after the deadline for key healthcare workers to have a third vaccine dose was extended until March 12. Originally, the deadline was February 12, which was yesterday, but was extended by a month in allowing thousands extra time to provide evidence to their employer that they have booked in for a third dose. The rule does apply for workers in a number of sectors, including healthcare, aged care, disability, and quarantine accommodation. If that evidence is not presented, they will not be able to return to work.
Dominic Perrottet says New South Wales is on track to ease COVID restrictions later this month. Speaking to Sky News, the New South Wales Premier said he can't see any reason to extend restrictions at this stage based on where we're at, quote. Mr Perrottet also said that there were no plans to make a third vaccine dose mandatory for international arrivals. The restrictions are set to be eased on February 27. A community has been left in shock after the death of a man in Brisbane's north. Police and paramedics say they found a man with critical head and leg injuries after being called to a disturbance at the Pine Rivers motel in Callinga, and some locals say it's not the first time they've seen police in the area. Reporter Roman McKinnon is on the ground with the details.
Just after midnight, police were called to the Pine Rivers motel in Callinga after a man was allegedly beaten to death using a variety of weapons including machete, bats and knives by a group well known to him. Detectives are thoroughly investigating as police earlier today towed away a grey Toyota Corolla with a smashed windscreen.
It's awful when anybody loses their life in regards to a horrific and confronting situation like this.
It's not the first time I've seen a body get taken away from there.
Christopher Lima suffered significant injuries and did undergo CPR, but little could be done to save him. It is believed 2 men and 1 woman were tracked down by the police dog squad in the nearby streets. Christopher was a Callinga local and a gym junkie. Police are appealing for dashcam footage between 10 p.m. on Thursday night and 1 a.m. on Friday morning. Roman McKinnon, 6 News.
Overseas now, Belgium has become the latest European country to ease COVID restrictions. Nightclubs will be allowed to reopen. Bars can extend their hours beyond the current limit of midnight. Non-essential workers won't have to work from home for at least 4 days a week. And people will be allowed to shop in groups of more than 2. Case numbers have dropped from a record of 75,000 to an average of less than 25,000, while hospitalisation rates have also declined. Spain will ease its border requirements, meaning children from non-EU countries over the age of 12 will not need to be fully vaccinated to enter. Those aged 12 to 17 can now visit by showing a negative PCR test taken within 72 hours of arrival in the country, rather than proof of double vaccination. The Guardian reports that with the exception of kids under 12, all other UK travellers will have to show that vaccination proof at least 2 weeks before arriving, and if more than 270 days have passed since their last dose was administered, proof of a booster is also mandated. Well, almost 60,000 bees have been stolen from a US supermarket's headquarters in Pennsylvania. The giant company says the bees were an essential part of the local food chain. Well, on a national level, pandemic supply chain pressures have begun to ease, but President Joe Biden is still facing criticism over inflation. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell has more.
Well, Leo, we are monitoring two stories this week in the U.S. One is rather unusual. 60,000 bees have been stolen from a U.S. supermarket's headquarters. It all happened back in January between the 28th and 30th. They're not exactly sure. It happened for a supermarket chain headquarters that was in Pennsylvania. We're told it was from the giant company's corporate field. And of course, as I mentioned, it was stolen in late January. In a press release, they called bees an essential part of our food supply chain. They went on to say that they were disappointed about what happened. We're told that there are several things being done in order to help out with this incident. People are looking for the bees, but really they say this effort was for bee conservation because populations have been dwindling for years, and the beekeeping industry has been booming because so many people are trying to save the bees. Not only are they lost due to theft in some cases, but they're also lost due to weather. In certain years, when it gets too cold for the bees, they ultimately do pass away. So this supermarket chain really taking a big hit today with the loss of 60,000 bees that were stolen from the headquarters. Meanwhile, inflation is up. Nearly everything is up. Speaking of this, I just went to the gas station a few days ago, almost $100 to fill up a gas tank. This time about last year, it would cost somewhere between $40 and $50 to do the same thing. So it has really went up in terms of gas prices. Not only is gas up, but mortgage rates are up, so are food costs. Many things going up. Well, President Biden said inflation was temporary. That was a while back, and now prices continue to rise. A new report shows that the average American family spends more than $275 a month than they did the same time last year. Well, President Biden was asked what the U.S. is doing to fix this problem in a recent interview where he called Lester Holt of NBC Nightly News a wise guy. He did recognize, though, that it was the reporter's job to ask tough questions. The most solid plan we've seen is having interest rates go up for other things in order to curb inflation. But economic experts say really paying more and making more money is the only way to do this. They're calling it the hidden tax. I'll continue to monitor both these stories from here in the U.S. I'm Jackson Gosnell. Back to you.
Well, take a look at this. The president of North Macedonia walking a girl who has Down syndrome to school after hearing that she was being bullied. Embla Adama and her family were visited by Stevo Penderovsky, who walked the 11-year-old to school and waved her off at the school gates. In a press release, the president said he encouraged and supported Embla's parents in their fight for the protection of rights of children like her, adding that prejudices in that context are the main obstacle to building an equal and just society for all. Now, it's Ivan and Melly with a look at what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, protecting children and the elderly. Are the young and vulnerable ready for variant X? An exclusive Q&A with WA's top doctor.
A shot in the arm. State government funding for industries affected by border opening delays.
The Chief Health Officer's new definition of casual contacts, close contacts and exposure sites. Plus Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Alright, thanks to Ivan and Melly there. Now to tomorrow's weather forecast right across the country. Thunderstorms expected, 25 in Brisbane, 26 in Sydney, partly cloudy, 28 in the nation's capital Canberra, 31 and sunny in Melbourne, 20 in heavy clouds in Hobart, getting to a top of 32 in Adelaide, 38 in Alice Springs, rain, 36 in Perth, and in Darwin, a warm but wet top of 31. And just before we go tonight, just another reminder that if you want to help keep us independent, go to patreon.com/6newsau, where you can donate just $4 a month. Now, that is cheaper than a lot of newspaper and streaming subscriptions. And not only will you be helping support the next generation of journalists, you will also be getting early, exclusive access to a number of big announcements. For example, if we have a big interview, you will find out about that on Patreon first. In fact, our Adam Bant interview, that was revealed on Patreon before anywhere else. So again, that is patreon.com/6newsau. And that is 6 News for this Sunday. You can stay up to date with the latest headlines by heading to our website, 6newsau.com, and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.